We're delighted to have Katharine Hill with us today, the UK Director of Care for the Family. She's going to be speaking to us twice, giving a keynote now and drawing some reflections on the day together later. Let's give a warm welcome up. Thank you, Katharine.
Thank you very much, and it is so good to be here, to be involved in this really, really important topic. And Annabelle, thank you so much. Really helpful to have set the stage in that way. And as has already been said, we're going to be looking at the aims of Engage to raise awareness of the key problems, the barriers to Christian marriage, and also to highlight some practical solutions. But I have to begin by confessing that I don't have a very good track record, really, in this area. So as a new Christian at university, I went out with quite a number of guys who weren't Christians. And it wasn't long before somebody, older and wiser, took me on one side and explained to me the error of my ways. So keen to please, I immediately started to go out with a believer. He was wonderful. He was a Bible scholar, he was godly, he was a worship leader, he had even better just come back from a trip, a mission trip to Africa. The only problem was, I didn't fancy him. In fact, one night when he was kissing me, I had the distinct impression that he was thinking about systematic theology. It was a disaster. Now, I'm pleased to say since then I met my husband Richard, and we then married. But the story of our family, the story of our 4 children and their journey with faith and relationships, I think is a microcosm of many of the issues that we're going to be looking at this afternoon. Men and the church, singleness, marriage, all those issues. And I think it's good to remember that for many of us, probably all of us, this isn't just about others. And however these issues impact you personally, whether as a church leader, whether as a representative of an organisation, the fact that you're here today, I guess, means that you understand that these issues are really important and their importance to God. This is an issue that is on the heart of God for the church. So what is unique about Christian marriage? And in that context, we're talking about one Christian marrying another. Is it something special? Is it a big deal? Or as I've called this talk, Christian marriage, deal or no deal? Because the answer to that question predicates all that follows. If there is something special about Christian marriage, then we need to be doing something. If not, we might as well enjoy each other's company this afternoon and then go home. What is the deal about Christian marriage? You don't have to be a Christian to have a strong marriage. And we would be naive to think that being a Christian in some way protects us from marriage breakdown. At Care for the Family, we see more heartache in a week than many people, I think, see in a lifetime. And so many of the couples that come to us are Christians. So what is the deal? Well, I want to tell you a story from the very beginning of Care for the Family that I think in some way sows a seed to answer the questions that we're going to be looking at this afternoon. So a woman attended one of our marriage seminars right back in the early days. We called it Marriage Under Pressure. We soon learned that that wasn't a great title, actually, for a seminar. People were coming with brown bags over their heads because they didn't want to be identified, and we changed it to Marriage Matters. But for that woman, the title Marriage Under Pressure was probably right. And shortly after the seminar, she wrote us a letter, and this is what she said. She said, "On Saturday, my husband and I attended the Marriage Under Pressure seminar. It was a day that changed our lives. In the morning, before leaving our home, I said to my husband, I think this seminar is our last hope. If nothing good comes of this day, I think we may have to part. You see, after 14 years of marriage, he'd had an affair. I've not been able to forgive him. However sorry he said he was, I simply couldn't. That was until Saturday, but you talked about God forgiving us. And I thought, how can I not forgive? And your words made me think so much about my children, about my little girl and my little boy. They deserve a happy life, a mother and a father to love and care for them. The whole day made us look at our family, and we talked so much that night, and we're still talking. We laughed a lot, and at the end of the day, we cried together. Thank you. Saturday changed our lives. And then there was a wonderful PS, and it just said, here's to the next 14 years. Well, 10 years later, they sent a photograph to us at Care for the Family, a picture of them on holiday with their children. And Rob Parsons, who's the chairman and founder, he gathered us all together, and he said all the books, all the seminars, the whole ministry would be worth it just to see that photograph of that couple and these two children smiling and beaming out of that photograph with a mum and with a dad. But it began with forgiveness. And of course, forgiveness can occur in marriages where people aren't Christians. But forgiveness is the very DNA of Christianity and therefore of Christian marriage. Forgiveness isn't magic. When we try and forgive, it doesn't mean that the memories or the hurts will go away. So that woman, she would have still woken up occasionally with that sick feeling in her stomach. She, I think, still would have had to look away sometimes when she went past the hotel where she knew that the affair began. There will still be things that bring back painful memories. But for that couple, forgiveness gave them a chance. It was the key that allowed them at least to try again. And I think that goes to the very heart of Christian marriage. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we read about the cord of 3 strands that's not quickly broken. Christian marriage is a cord of 3 strands, and so much of the power of it comes from a source much higher than just the couple themselves. It's not that other marriages can't find forgiveness, but in this woman's case, there was a foundation to her life, and in fact, the marriage itself that allowed, that demanded even, that she drew on that wisdom, that strength, that encouragement that came from outside the confines of their relationship. Do you remember what she said in that letter? It said, you talked about God forgiving us. And at the very heart of what we now know as the Lord's Prayer is that phrase, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. The power of Christian marriage, it's rooted in the love and in the forgiveness of God. That's the power of Christian marriage. You can look now at the pattern. And the Bible begins with God bringing Adam and Eve, man and woman, together in the garden in marriage. And you'll know the imagery goes throughout Scripture and ends in the book of Revelation with the wedding of the Lamb, when we discovered that the real marriage is between Christ and the church. Our marriages on earth are just a reflection of it. Marriage is God's idea. Marriage is God's design. And for some reason, although Jesus himself was single, God has chosen marriage to be the living illustration of the deepest relationship with human beings. Christian marriage is inextricably linked to the image of the bride of Christ, for whom he gave his life sacrificially, and that affected everything, including the way that we see love. And Christian marriage has at its heart that sacrificial love. We were at a friend's daughter's wedding last week. It was a beautiful day. The bride looked radiant. The sun came streaming in through the stained glass windows. The bride and groom had eyes and ears only for each other, and that was how it should be. But as they made their vows to each other, I felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were promising to each other. The vows that dared to break in on the day, that to warn of darker times ahead. I will love you if we are rich, and the vows call, and what if we are poor? I will love you for better, and the vows whisper, what of worse? I will love you if we are well, and what about when we are sick? Will those vows be called in for that young couple? As sure as night follows day, they will. Marriages break up, relationships fail, Those things are a fact of life, but it is also a fact that we will never find a relationship with anyone that lasts a lifetime unless we choose to keep love alive. And it's that choice that is at the heart of Christian marriage. At Care for the Family, we talk about January love. It's easy to love when the sun is in a cloudless sky. But what about when the storms come? Will we choose to love then? What does it take to love in January? Rob Parsons tells a story about counselling a young couple in their 20s. The guy had decided to leave the marriage. They were going to get divorced. They had a little baby that was 6 months old. And Rob says to him, why? Why are you going to leave your wife? And the guy replied, I don't feel in love anymore. And as he spoke, Rob said he couldn't help but gaze at this little bundle cradled in the wife's arms. And he said to the guy, did no one tell you that the feelings of love go up and down? Did no one tell you that there will be times when you have to choose to love with your will and not with your heart? And this young man said, no, nobody ever told me that. And Rob said he looked at this little girl, and the first man in her life was about to walk out on her forever, and nobody had ever told him that. There's no relationship that won't sometimes have to go through those tough times, and at least for a time to love, not because of, but in spite of. No relationship that comes to a time when both don't at some time feel in love, but the pattern of Christian marriage reflects the message at the heart of the gospel, that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. And Christian couples, they have not only the example, but also the command of Jesus. Jesus, who in Gethsemane said, not my will, but yours be done. The shape of Christian marriage is the shape of the cross. We love because he first loved us. So Christian marriage, it has a power outside those involved. It has a pattern of sacrificial covenant love. And it has a purpose. In his book, The Meaning of Marriage, Tim Keller says this. He says, God devised marriage to reflect his saving love for us in Christ, to refine our character, and to create stable human community. Now, Keller is talking about a community for children to be brought up in. But of course, it's much, much wider than that. We were married by James Jones, who's the former Archbishop of Liverpool, and at our wedding, he quoted the Archbishop of Canterbury, who said this, a marriage that works is a marriage that works for others. And amazing as it sounds, countercultural as it is, God has bigger purposes for marriage than meeting the needs of the two people involved. Because a marriage that is lived as God intends displays something of his image to the world. Christian marriage doesn't just benefit the couple. It doesn't just provide that safe place and nurturing place for children. It benefits society as a whole in displaying in some amazing way the image of God as man and woman come together in marriage. That's the example of Jesus. That's the heart of Christian marriage. Now, every marriage has its challenges, and Christian marriages are no exception to that. But there are some very specific challenges that couples face when just one is a person of faith, when just one is a Christian. There are tough practical issues to work through about values, about time, about money, the everyday things of life that people will approach through a different lens. And I've been asked just to take a practical look at some solutions, some things that we can actually do to support those who are married to somebody who isn't a Christian. And the first thing I would say is be realistic. I'll always remember a woman coming to speak to me after a Care for the Family seminar. She waited till the end. She waited till nearly everybody had left. She came up and she said that she was struggling in her marriage. Her husband wasn't a Christian. She said he doesn't communicate. He doesn't listen. We haven't had sex for about a year. I feel so lonely. I wish he was a Christian. Now, maybe some aspects of that marriage would be better if that man did have a faith, but it wouldn't be the panacea. There's loneliness, plenty of loneliness at the heart of many Christian marriages. That woman needed support, she needed encouragement, but she needed a dose of realism as well. And I think it's too easy for somebody to think that what they're experiencing is just because they're married to someone who isn't a Christian. Actually, what they're going through is normal. All those things happen in Christian marriages as well. And in seeking to uphold the beauty of marriage and family life in the church, let's not make an idol of it. We won't demean the value of Christian marriage just by adding a dose of realism. So be realistic. Let's be vulnerable as well. I recently witnessed a wonderful scene. I was sitting in my car outside a preschool, and a man came towards me along the pavement. He was holding the hand of a little girl. He was 30, he looked well dressed, he looked confident, he looked like he had life together. Little girl was about 4, and they made their way towards me down the pavement, and then up the path towards the preschool. Halfway down the path, he bent down and he whispered something in her ear. And it dawned on me this was her first day at school. They carried on up the path. I don't know who was more reluctant to let go of the hand, but finally they did, and she skipped into school and into her new life. And I saw him just blow a kiss at the closed door. And then he moved along and he looked through the window and he smiled and he waved. And then he turned around and came back down the path towards me, and that's when I saw it. He just brushed away a tear. The wave, the smile, the tear. It's what so much and sums up so much of our lives, of our relationship, of bringing up kids, of the things that we do in family. And as church, we're pretty good. We're pretty good at the wave, we're pretty good at the smile. But what about the tear? Vulnerability. Vulnerability is one of our key values at Care for the Family. A short while ago, we gathered some of our volunteers together, and we said this: if you have a perfect marriage, if you have perfect children who have a cluster of A stars, who can't wait to jump off their seats and do the washing up, who keep their rooms tidy, we're really pleased for you. But if you can't wait to share your gems with the rest of us, you're probably not our kind of people. We need the kind of people who don't have life all sewn up. We need the kind of people who've cried a little, who are able to be vulnerable, who are able to say, I understand a bit about what you're going through. But we live in a society where it's hard to be vulnerable. On Facebook, we have a show reel of our successes, of pictures of happy marriages. We get Christmas letters telling us all about the wonderful things that we're doing, and that's great. We want to enjoy those moments. Don't let that rob us of enjoying them. But particularly as Christians, if we're Christians and we're married, let's show some vulnerability as well as appropriate. I've been in a church where key couples in leadership, their marriages have broken down. And the first thing we knew about it, and these were close friends, first thing we knew about it was when they separated. And the ripple effects have been huge. Let's put down some of our masks. Let's be real as family together. Real about some of the struggles of married life. That won't just help those that we minister to. It will also allow us in our individual lives and in our churches to be a bit more comfortable in our own skin. So be realistic, be vulnerable, be accessible. I think one of the greatest challenges for any Christian organisation is to share what we believe and yet remain accessible to those of no faith. And there are dangers in this. I think at Care for the Family, we went through a period where we were so keen to be accessible that we lost the distinctiveness of our Christian faith. And that's not the case anymore. We know who we are. We're a Christian organisation who work through the local church and who want to provide resources for Christians, for those of any faith, for those of no faith. And actually, when we know who we are, we can have the confidence, sometimes not to say as much, sometimes to preach from the Bible as appropriate, just asking God for wisdom in individual situations. And my counsel to those with unbelieving spouses, I think, would be this: not to feel the need to put that helpful booklet by the loo or by the bed. Not to have to feel they have to drag their spouse along to hear the next Christian speaker. And sometimes, of course, just to see the situations where God is already at work in their lives. And that leads on to the next point, which is to be open. Many spouses may not be as far from God as we think. Let's make sure we see them with God's eyes, because he looks at the heart. Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they a great husband? Are they a great dad? Are they generous with their time? They may not be as far from God as we think. Let's not put them in the prodigal box. Let's take the second look. And for the spouse, let's not be too hard on them. It might be hard for them to get along to church every week. Let's give them too a bit of grace. And then be inclusive. Let's find opportunities for the unbelieving spouse to get involved and to serve. I remember one of our Christmas services, there was a guy called Tom who came along. He didn't used to come to church, and he had a DIY business. And the children's worker needed someone to build a Narnia wardrobe, because they were going to do the church up as Narnia for the Christmas service. And this guy got involved. And through that, he became valued, he became a friend to many. He ended up coming on an Alpha course, and it was all through that offer to be involved. We went to a Burns night dinner at the beginning of January. It was a really swish affair. It was evening dress for the ladies. It was kilts and black tie and stuff for the guys. The bagpipes were playing. It was a very beautiful scene. And as we enjoyed our dinner, halfway through the evening, suddenly there was a bit of commotion at the door, and a guy burst in. He was a bit unkempt. He had a raggedy, dirty beard, dirty coat, bottle of whiskey in his pocket, and two people got up immediately to escort him out. And at that moment, somebody from the far side of the room just stood up and shouted right across this dinner. They said, "Leave him. He can join us. There's room at this table for you." Isn't that a great thing that we can say as church, our message to everyone, and what we're talking about today, particularly to those who are married to somebody who doesn't believe, who isn't a Christian. So they don't feel that they don't fit in. We need to be yelling across the room to them, "Come on, join in. There's room here. There's room at this table for you." And then finally, be prayerful. Undergirding all this in prayer, nothing more important than for people to know that we are praying for their husbands, for their wives. We're in a small group in our church in Bristol, and there's a lady that's just started coming along whose husband isn't a Christian, and we have committed as a group to pray for him every single week, and she's been overwhelmed at the love and the care that has offered her in that situation. She sent me a text. She said, I've rarely felt so loved and supported. And you add to that the power of prayer. So just coming to the end, we've looked at Christian marriage, we've looked at its power, its purpose, and the pattern. We've looked at some practical things that we can do to support those who are married to someone who's not a Christian. And just to end, I just want to tell you one more story that really, I think, encapsulates what is unique about Christian marriage. And to do that, I want to take you to a London taxi. I was talking to the taxi driver, and he said to me that he'd been married for 30 years. Their marriage had weathered some storms, but a couple of years ago, the wife, had gone out at night. She got out of bed to go to the loo, and she'd stumbled. The next day, she was in the supermarket, and she reached out for a can, and it fell out of her hand. And she was told she had a debilitating illness that was affecting her muscles. And the doctor told her to do some weight-bearing exercise. She joined a gym, but it didn't go well. She tried cycling, and her balance wasn't good enough. And then a flyer came through the letterbox advertising ballroom dancing classes. and they decided to give it a go. He said, "We got through. It wasn't strictly, but we managed." Now, one evening, they were having a cup of tea together, and he looked at her and he said, "What is it about the dancing?" He said, "You tried the exercise machine, you tried the gym. What is it about the dancing?" And she was quiet for a moment, and then she looked up and she said, "Honestly?" She said, "Don't you know? Because I do. It's because you're holding me." And the truth is, all of us will go through times when we need the support of others. Because you're holding me, it's a lovely story. But the truth is, so often it's not enough. We need more than that. There are no easy answers. It's not always possible to keep marriages together. But I've spoken with countless couples who've made it through. And when I've spoken to them, the secret has gone beyond the normal of keep talking to each other, don't forget to do the little things. I always do what she tells me. In essence, they've said that someone outside our marriage has been holding us and sustaining us in the dark times. And perhaps that is what is at the heart of Christian marriage, that incredible strand of three chords. That's the uniqueness of Christian marriage. Thank you.